for entrepreneurs, for people that have these multiple interests, for honestly highly successful and highly high performers, ADHD is a superpower. It's what allows us to be able to move at the pace that we work at. I run, 3 separate businesses. They all kind of work together. And then I'm also a full-time single dad. I'm handling the household. I'm handling, them and their school schedules and their sports schedules and the extracurricular activities on top of my own business.
It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of existing, right? We connect dots that other people don't see. Certain brain types, certain, neurodivergent folks, they have that capacity to wear a lot of different hats and to do a lot of different things and keep a lot of concepts up here, juggle a lot of balls at the same time. So for me, how am I able to channel that?
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Happy Hour with Hatchman. I am so pumped to bring on our new guest, Mike, Mr. Three-Piece, right? Was that it?
Yes, sir.
I love the getup, by the way. It's
Thank you.
It's like is it the three-piece suit T-shirt, right? Instead of the tuxedo
This
T-shirt.
version is the three-piece suit T-shirt. My typical attire is a full custom bespoke three-piece suit, and I have 9 of them.
Well, Mike is going to be just a fascinating guest. I know he's dipped into the real estate investing world, as well as cybersecurity, and barely met this guy today, but already we've had such a fun conversation. So excited to see where this thing goes. But yeah, Mike, I'll just kind of let you take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your passions, and then we'll go from there, man.
Awesome. Thanks. Pleasure to be here. And to the audience, thanks for tuning in. Mike Elkins. So I am the Chief Human and Information Security Officer at Humanis Technologies. We're a company that's focused on 3 pillars: risk management, cybersecurity, and resiliency. So we really help companies kind of address and solve a lot of problems across those 3 different pillars: modernization efforts, projects that are off the tracks, things that they really need to work on and kind of increase the capabilities of those organizations. And that covers every aspect of technology, right? Artificial intelligence, infrastructure, cybersecurity, things like that. I've also been a real estate investor for over 23 years. I've dabbled into a lot. Most recently had a lot of lessons learned from a failure. I take the lessons of fail forward, and I tried to actually take a swing and buy an old office park and data center, which was a campus that I worked at for over 13 years. Saw the deal came about and assembled a team, put it together. And while we didn't make it to the last and final round, we made it to the second round, which was, for my perspective, great. A lot of lessons learned. So in the world of real estate investing, as a young lad, I had a gentleman when I was about 18 years old. He had about 28 properties throughout Philadelphia. And guy wasn't married, had no kids. And for him, it was just a hobby, right? I always remember this. He would grab a 30-pack of Old Milwaukee's Best, and he wouldn't even put it on ice. He'd just stick it in the house he was working on, and he'd kill a 30-pack and, sling paint and drywall all weekend. And I fell in love with real estate, bought my first house when I was 20, built my first house at 23, and just kept going on.
The phrase itself, failing but learned from it. I think so many people just are afraid to try things because of failure. And I've said it on here before, and I've had so many good conversations with people, but I have learned way more from all of my failures in life than anything that, one might consider a success, right? I had in my life, I grew up, not a ton of money in our family. Like, we were rich in many other ways. I have phenomenal parents, great siblings. I'm the oldest of 4. But, we didn't have that monetary side of things, right? We didn't have the fancy cars. We didn't go on a lot of vacations. We just, we're a good little family. And so being the oldest in my family, I'd always had that mindset of I was going to be a millionaire. That was my goal in life. I'm going to be a millionaire. And in my mind, a millionaire is somebody who makes $1 million in a single year. And so that was kind of always my goal. And then I accomplished that goal back when I was 35. And honestly, I went into kind of the deepest depression of my life shortly after that, because I didn't know what I wanted next. My entire life, I had planned on, okay, this is what I'm going for. And then I hit it and I'm like, well, now what? I don't know what to do. And so it was interesting, but luckily I was able to get out of that mindset, and there's been several things that have happened in my life since then. But I think that's really it, right? We have to just not be afraid to try things and go after things. So, you found a passion early on in real estate, it sounds like among other things. And buying that first property so young, would you attribute a lot of your maybe financial success to getting into real estate as young as that you did?
100%. And I'll add a couple more on in real estate. Again, I've had a almost 28-year career in technology. I worked for $1 million, billion, $1 trillion companies at very senior levels, and very successful in that world. Even that was just fail forward, right? I have no college
Right.
degree. I got a girl pregnant at 16, became a dad at 17. So life, just threw me a lot of plot twists. And when
Sure.
I bought that first house, I bought it a month before my 21st birthday. I'll never forget, I paid $59,500 for this house. Yeah, you can't buy anything for that. You can't even buy a
No,
car
no,
or a truck for that nowadays.
right? Yeah, you can't get that price anymore.
Right. And yeah, absolutely. And even fast forward years later, right? I was married for about 16 years, and my ex-wife and I, we did a great job at kind of building a portfolio and self-managing it. And then
Yeah.
when the divorce went through, a lot of that just crumbled and collapsed. And throughout my lifetime, I will say that, a lot of times where I came into personal struggles or financial struggles, I've been able to go back to the real estate and do a cash out refi or do some sort of debt consolidation, because I had that physical asset that was turning some revenue, or at least the banks would look at that, as some sort of value.
Yeah.
And I'll say that has been key even now to this day, right? I've been on my own as within Humanis Technologies for coming up on 2 years, and really the real estate has been able to help kind of balance some of those offsets in life. So absolutely, it's been key. And even outside of that, the lessons you learn in real estate, not just on how to swing the hammers and do the busy things, but how to property manage, how to deal with people, how to deal with contractors, how to price bids, how to I've tried to buy properties in wetlands and historical preservations, and understanding all those little nuances. They just, one brick on top of another brick, and next thing you know, you've got a wall.
There's so much that goes into real estate, and it's funny because with social media now, everybody's got an opinion on things, and so that's one of them, right? Is real estate is the easy money. You just show a house and you collect a commission check or whatever, right? It's like, just come spend a day with me is what I tell those people. I'm like, let's spend a day on what these transactions look like, especially when you start getting into that type of stuff. Every state, every county, property type, they all have their own little nuances. You learn by trying and failing. It's like you said, you go through something and it goes south. That lesson sticks with you a lot more than one that just goes through completely smooth. So the goal is to never make the same mistake twice, but I've probably done that before many times. So
same here, right? It's cool. A lot of risk mitigation too, right? It's especially properties. I'll give you one quick example. My real estate investment thesis has changed a lot over the last few years in terms of condominiums and HOAs. I used to own a couple of condos and HOAs. I've been exiting from all of those and just selling them off because of the risks that are associated with HOAs. And, if you would have told me that 15 years ago, I would have been like, oh, they're a great bet and blah, blah, blah. And now as I'm more mature, right, I'm like, actually, there's a lot of risk with that. And, if you own multiple properties in a single HOA, which I did at one point, I owned, I think, 5 properties in one HOA development. And I was like, oh, no, let me start pairing them off because, right, you get one special assessment, you're bust.
No, absolutely. It's, they can change one of the bylaws or something can happen. I had something similar happen with a short-term rental property of mine where, at first they wanted minimum days, and before they didn't have that. And so, it just completely changes the strategy. So, that's it, right? Number one, the world is changing. Like, I have this conversation with my kids a lot. My biggest frustration with the school system. I also don't have a degree in, well, I technically have a college degree, but it's like an associate of the arts. Do we even count that? But like, I love education, but the school system, I felt that the problem is that they're teaching for a world that they lived in, right? Like it's not for the future. Like my kids were getting in trouble for using AI to help them with their homework. I'm like, but why wouldn't we encourage that? Like we're just getting started into this AI and what it can do and how it can assist us in our day-to-day lives. Like I use it every single day for my business. Why wouldn't we encourage our kids to use that and do other things? And just nobody has a good argument. Well, because it's not allowed. I'm like, I just don't accept those types of arguments. Like we need to have a solid why behind it. I love to question everything. And so anyway, I'm probably not the favorite parent in the school system, but
no, but I think, in our pre-conversation before we hit record, we were talking about kind of backgrounds and experiences. And I very much believe exactly what you're saying. I don't know that our current education format, nor the education format that I was exposed to, growing up in Philadelphia public schools. I mean, look, I love the city of Philadelphia, but my education was a joke, an absolute joke.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in third grade, I was put in special needs classes because I was a very hyperactive ADHD kid and they didn't know what to do. So like, all right, go sit with the kids with football helmets. And that's what I did. And, it was getting bad because life became a Montessori school for me because I got to learn a lot. But if you look at the traditional education versus real life, using things like artificial intelligence, using things like collaboration, it's like a lot of things that I find in the world of real estate and in the world of technology and corporate America is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of things I learned in university or in undergrad, or not undergrad, but like lower levels of education. It's like you get that ingrained in us, and then you almost have to break that training to be able to look at the world and treat it differently. It's like, do your homework assignment, don't talk to anybody else, and it's got to be in your own words. I'm like, but the real world, I mean, you can pull from all the experts, including AI and the internet, right? Why wouldn't we kind of teach people how to leverage those resources to do things better, faster, cheaper, stronger versus just struggling? And
honestly, I think that's been kind of my favorite thing with the birth of social media, right? Because I'm one of those millennials, so I grew up where we didn't have, I didn't have that cell phone until I was 18. It definitely didn't have the internet on it. And so like I've kind of seen the world slowly evolve. Mm-hmm. But, with that is what I've found is truly successful individuals, those that have had success in their life, whether that's monetary, whether it's with relationships, no matter what it is. When they're enjoying their life and they're happy and they found something that works for them, they will freely share it with anybody that's willing to listen. Like I've been, lucky enough to be in rooms with, multimillionaires, with billionaires, with people that have done super well in their life. And they will tell you all of their secrets. They'll tell you step by step what they did to make it happen. And all you have to do is follow those same steps if that's something that you want. And so, like you said, with the education system, it's like, you shouldn't cheat off of others or whatever. It's like, no, like real life is all about collaboration. And I think we're starting to figure that out. And maybe there's a way to get that into the school system someday. But, it is all about collaboration and sharing something that works. Because I'm a big believer in sharing everything that I do. Like, I'm not one of those, one of those guys that like charges a fee for, to take a class to show you how to, get business from social media. No, I give that all for free. I'm very clear with how I do it. Like I get most of my business from, for real estate deals, for mortgage deals from social media. I do it without paid ads. And it's just because it's connecting with people. It's showing my personality because I don't see anything as competition. Like there's a million real estate agents out there. There's a million different loan officers out there, but I'm one of one. Like I'm a unique guy. I say what I say. Like that's what I wanted to portray from day one. I didn't want to try to pretend to be anybody else, because when I meet someone in person and we talk face to face, like if we ever get a chance to meet face to face, like I don't want you to be like, oh, well, you're a completely different guy in person than you are online, right? Like, no, you have to just be authentic, because there's going to be people that appreciate that and are going to want to work with me anyway. And there's probably people that don't like me, and that's okay, because I probably don't want to work with them anyway. So it's just, it's finding that true authentic self. And I find that the more of myself that I am, the more I'm finding others that like me for who I am, and I enjoy chatting with them. So it's what life's all about, man.
The whole authenticity thing, I believe in 100% spot on, right? And I'm authentically me to a fault sometimes, right? And you like me or not, trust me, I've got plenty of frenemies out there too. Like it's part of the process, right? You're not everybody's going to like you. But I'll tell you, I'm 44, and it's a continual evolution for me to constantly grow and be more of myself in all settings, right? I'm me, and I love your approach around kind of giving some of that content and education away. What got me in the real estate when I was young is probably what got a lot of people into real estate, right? Robert Kiyosaki's early books. Totally love them. I'm like the magic quadrants of real estate and entrepreneur. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand this a little bit more. And giving away that content is important. I mean, even in the world of technology, I'm a speaker at some of the largest cybersecurity conferences in the world. I teach at local conferences, and I don't really charge. I mean, I charge for other areas, right, for corporate America and stuff. But for there's this one group called ISACA Philadelphia. It's a group of information security and auditors. I did a 2-hour training course for them on what took me 25 years of learnings to be able to get to, because I want to be able to share that knowledge and get it out there. And I think that's an important aspect. And to be honest, corollary in real estate, a lot of the knowledge I have in real estate is from just conversations with people like you who are in the game to be like, oh, how did you do this? Or how did you do Y? Or, oh, do you have somebody that, that's working on a similar deal that you can kind of connect me with? And that collaboration is key. That's
what it's all about. It's just, it's helping our fellow man. And, I can't remember who gave this quote, but it said, we're best designed to serve the people that we used to be, right? Like I grew up just kind of an everyday Joe, we didn't have any, I had special privileges in other ways, but in certain areas I didn't. And so I like to help those types of people. It's like, I'd always thought that was only reserved, like, what do they say? It takes money to make money. No, not at all. Like my first property, I didn't spend anything out of my own pocket. Like I used a down payment assistance program. Because I knew I just had to get in the game. I was working full time, making like barely over minimum wage, and I barely was able to afford that first house. But it was about what I was able to do once I had the property. All right, and then once you start to earn equity, once it becomes more valuable, it's an actual asset. It's something I was living in initially, and my original plan was it was because I was when I first moved out to got out of high school, I was renting a room with some guy who owned the home. And it was a 4-bedroom house, and he was renting out each room for $500. And so then I was just doing the math. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's making like $1,500 a month. And back then homes were like 150 grand, 160 grand. And so I was like, and I worked at a bank. And so I just started running the numbers on the mortgage calculator. I'm like, wait a minute, like, why am I not doing this? And so that's what got me to buy my first house at 23. I bought a 4-bedroom house. I was going to rent out the rooms and start to build my real estate portfolio. Ended up meeting my now ex-wife, and we, started a family and had kids. And again, I have no regrets. I was still able to leverage that property once I sold it, buy a much bigger property. Then I started getting into rental properties. But yeah, it was sometimes it's just seeing things from a different point of view and giving it a try. Like, because what my thought process is, what do I have to lose? If this all fails, I am technically in the exact same spot where I already am. So I don't have anything to lose. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you were talking earlier about fear, right? And I feel a ton of fear, right? Like internally all the time, right? I wish I didn't. But the reality is, fuck fear, move forward.
Right. Yeah. Fuck it.
There's a quote, I don't know who said it, attribute it to some awesome person, but it's do something today that your future self will thank you for. And doing things like taking the risk to buy your first property. Same for me when I bought my first property. That was a huge risk, but 3 years later, I sold that property I bought it for 60, I sold it for $120. Rolled that 120 into building my own home. Once I built my own home, I rolled that into buying rental properties and just, and when you look back, there's the quote from Steve Jobs, you can never connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect the dots looking back, right? And I look back and I'm like, it was really hard for me to do those things at those times, financially, emotionally, mentally, like it takes its toll on you. But compartmentalizing and taking a logical approach and looking at things for what they are, and especially in the world of real estate investing, like, does cash flow cover debt service? Do you got enough equity? Like, whatever it's
math. It's either going to make sense or it's not. That's what I tell people. I'm like, look, either is it going to make sense or it won't. Like, there's no in between.
Yeah, but just make that decision and take a risk. And I always say, if you're going to take a risk on anything, right, take a risk on yourself. Spend a little money for some education. Go to a conference that you feel you're excited about. Go jump on a podcast. I mean, I remember the first time that did a podcast, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do on this podcast. This is a little nerve-wracking. At the end, I was like, all right, it's done. And you get better and better over time.
It is. It's that practice, right? Like, so I've been in the content game on social media for, close to 10 years now. And, I remember just being so scared for that first video that I posted, just terrified, right? Like, because think about any time you try something new, more than likely you're going to suck at it. Like we all of us have natural talents as human beings to one thing or another. But for the most part, anytime you're trying something new, think about, this is what that book, cybernetics talks about. Like even tying your shoes for the very first time as a child is a difficult task that takes repetition and direction and someone to kind of show you what to do until it just becomes second nature. And so if we have more of an approach with really anything in life with that, like just if there's something that you want to go for, just try it. Know that you're going to suck at it, but you got to just keep trying and keep going. And eventually you're going to get better at it, and then it becomes second nature. And so it's just, the mindset is simple if you can really think of it that way. But I think what happens as we get older, we forget that we're supposed to try things, right? Like we're naturally inclined with that when we're brand new in this world, right? So I have my sister just had her daughter a year. She just turned a year old in January. So she's brand new to the world. Have you ever heard of a child that like attempts to walk, can't figure it out, and then just decides to not walk? Like that's not a thing, right? Right? Like what are we talking about? And so like why sometimes I feel like our evolution as humans is sometimes we need to just remember that inner child, right? That when we're brand new to the world, that we're just supposed to try things, figure it out, suck, get better, and try again.
Yeah. And, fail forward. I kind of look at my life. If I look back, I say my life, if you were to look at my life over the last 44 years, I could probably compartmentalize it into roughly 2 to 4 year chapters. And every 2 to 4 years, I don't know what it is about my personality and brain type. I just like to fuck shit up and shuffle things up and just change completely, right? Whether it's going to a completely new job, a new company, taking an additional risk. Those are things that, to your point, as we get older and older, people take less and less risk because they get more comfortable, which is fine. I mean, you've earned it. Like, everybody has different things. But for me, I'm always like, okay, how can I shuffle this up a little bit? What can I do that's going to put me outside of my comfort zone? That's going to force me to grow. It's going to force me to learn. It's going to force me to put myself out there into the world, or to make a new contact, or to do this thing new. And let the chips fall where they may. Sometimes you learn lessons. Sometimes you do great, and sometimes it's in between. But take those risks.
But here's the thing: not everybody has that. So why do you think you're like that? What do you think sets like? What do you think it was the way you were brought up? Is it just something you've always had within you? Why do you think you like to do that?
That's a great question. I've tried to ask myself this a lot, right? Because there's part of me like, why can't I just be comfortable and do one thing for a long time, right? Yeah. I think part of it was just innately me. I'm high energy. I'm ADHD all over the place. Oh, yeah. I mentioned my education growing up. I mean, from 3rd grade through 11th and a half grade, I was in special needs classes. So I never learned how to learn, right? I never learned all the formal stuff in education that everybody did throughout those years. And I just kind of did whatever I wanted or whatever I was interested in. And thankfully, most of that was technology and computer labs and hacking and figuring things out and reverse engineering and breaking apart things and being like, okay, what are these little diodes and how do they work? And trying to put them back together and knowing I have extra parts, but it still works. But okay, we'll figure it out. So I certainly think there's part of that's just innate.
That's just who you are deep down. So
yeah, but I also think environment too, right? Growing up in the city of Philadelphia, not to use the term that you would hear on like rap videos, raised by the streets, but like I was raised in and around the streets, right? Like I was never home. I was always out. I was at a Boys and Girls Club or the Police Athletic League of Philadelphia. And, we be out until it was dark. And you just, you learn a lot of lessons when you kind of live that kind of a lifestyle. And there are some risks that you're going to take, figuring out how to ride a bike and I'm very self-taught in a lot of things. So I just kind of stumbled my way forward, I guess.
You just kind of figured a lot of it as you go. You're just a genuinely curious individual. I think that's
insatiably curious. Like I wish this brain was a little bit less sometimes, honestly. Like it hurts, but the amount of crap I have up in here, I mean, I have 3 books on my desk. One of them is called War Without Rules. This one is it's a former brigadier general from the Air Force who basically talks about China's playbook for global domination. I have another book, which is a real estate book, which is The Millionaire Real Estate Agent from Keller Williams. And I have another book here called The Art and Science of Meta War, which is how to coexist with AI-driven reality distortion, misinformation, and addiction in the metaverse. So, I mean, all 3 are very drastically different topics, right?
Yeah.
I can't stop being curious and learning about any and everything that I can.
I'm the same way. And, and I say this a lot, right? Because you mentioned, growing up, you were labeled as like special needs, had to go to the special education classes. Like, you didn't fit within a box that they had available to you. And I think those are just honestly the best type of people, right? Like we don't fit in those boxes. And so we're forced to kind of explore all kinds of things, and we end up having multiple interests. I had another guest on here who I ended up being a guest on his podcast, and he's called the Poly Innovator, because he has just all of these topics that he doesn't want to, they tell you on the internet to like pick one thing and just get really good at it. And he's like, fuck that. Like, no, there's too many good things in the world. Like I literally, for that reason, don't have like a favorite food. I'm like, why would I pick one when there's so many different awesome things out there? My favorite is new. I like to try new shit, but not everybody's wired that way. And I do think a lot of it is that ADHD part of it, right? We're just kind of pre-wired. And for years, that was always, I hate when they call it a disorder, right? Attention deficit. It's like, no, like for entrepreneurs, for people that have these multiple interests, for honestly highly successful and highly high performers, ADHD is a superpower. It's what allows us to be able to move at the pace that we work at, to be able to handle multiple different things. Like, I run, 3 separate businesses. They all kind of work together. And then I'm also a full-time single dad. Like I've got full custody of my 2 kids. And so I'm handling the household. I'm handling, them and their school schedules and their sports schedules and the extracurricular activities on top of my own business and on top of running a podcast and all this the other shit that I do. But I hear a lot of people that sometimes use the ADHD thing as an excuse to like either do nothing. I'm like, oh, well, I can't do that because I'm ADHD. I'm like, no, you just have to learn how to properly channel it. So, I always have a hard time articulating how I do it. So I'm interested to talk to others that seem to have figured it out. So how do you channel your ADHD to go after things and be successful?
I want to touch on what you said, one thing around, which is what every great business coach and business advisor says, and it's just choose one thing and do that one thing really well.
Yeah.
For my mindset, and it sounds like yours is somewhat equivalent, right? It's impossible for me to do that. If I did everything in my power to just do one thing, my brain will self-sabotage or do something else. I have an incapability to just do one thing. Now, I'm sure when I'm multitasking, right, there's no such thing as multitasking. It's just really rapid context switching. But for brains that are, I'll just put them under the bucket of neurodivergent, because there's ADHD, ADD, autism.
Neurodivergent.
For the folks who I would put in kind of that neurodivergent perspective, it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of existing, right? We connect dots that other people don't see. We take a discipline of real estate and a discipline of technology or something else, and we find so many interlapping, overlaying concepts that we could now be like, oh, I could put those 2 or 3 things together.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you're running 3 businesses, single parent, which I've been there, namaste, good luck for that. That's never an easy challenge, but it's a beautiful challenge.
It's the greatest experience of my life, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Like it was very hard to figure out at first, but I wouldn't change it for anything now. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, kids are a great thing. I mean, having a daughter at 17, really, I mean, I had to grow up. I had to get a job. I was working full time and going to high school full time. And I lived an hour away from my high school because I could make $5 more an hour at McDonald's working in the suburbs. And I bit that bullet, right? Certain brain types, certain, neurodivergent folks, they have that capacity to wear a lot of different hats and to do a lot of different things and keep a lot of concepts up here, juggle a lot of balls at the same time.
Yeah.
So for me, how am I able to channel that? I'm not saying I do it successful all the time by any means, right? I have my own internal struggles. I miss deadlines at work every once in a while, or a project the manager's like, oh, only go to this level. And I'm like, well, I want to go like 6 more levels deep, and I go a little bit deeper. And sometimes I get a little, hell, you're not supposed to do that. But having outlets, both physically, that's really important. Having some sort of a physical outlet, whether it's physical exercise, playing a sport, video gaming, whatever the thing is, to be able to just kind of get the mind going. And then you can work on problem solving in your subconscious, right? And you can do other things in your subconscious. That's really important. Staying active. And then, honestly, having good mentors and good support systems around are a beautiful thing. right? I can't wait until AI and automation in the future makes it look like we live in the Jetsons so that we have Rosie the robot, right? Because I was a single dad for about 4 years after my divorce. My son lived with me. I was working a full-time job. It's really hard, right?
It is
I'm like,
hard.
well, if I have a machine where I never have to wash a dish, I just put my dish into this little machine, it washes, sterilizes it, and puts it away for me, and I just grab it when I need it. How much time is that going to save me? How much time are things like Rosie the robot going to allow entrepreneurs like yourself to put more into the business or more into the family or to innovate and create more products and services? Or I also think about the people who maybe have some mental or physical capabilities or disabilities, whatever term works for people. If we can use some of these world of technologies to increase our resiliency in the home, right? Make sure we have more water, more food, and more other energy resiliency aspects, but also, take care of all the busy. I hate adulting. Adulting sucks, right?
It does.
It's a motherfucker. Fuck
right?
Adulting at this point.
Especially
right?
every day, right? Come on. Can't we get a little bit of a break? Like,
it never stops, right? So I always think, how can I think about stuff like that? Now, I'll tie the two concepts together. You're talking about how do I channel that energy?
Yeah.
I let my imagination run wild sometimes. I will walk around my house, and I've done this more times than I can count. And if I was to come to your house, I would do the same. I would walk around your house, and in my mind's eye, I'm looking at the way the home is structured, how everything's worked. And then I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this look like Rosie the Robot and the Jetsons? How can I automate things so that what use cases are for Brandon and the Hatch family? What are things that would be important for you that you want to save time and energy on? And I let my creativity just explode. And that it's fun. But also, if you don't put some bounded context around it, that creativity can just get out of control. And next thing you know, you lost 2 days and you really didn't solve anything. You just stayed in your head all day, right?
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not saying I do
it. It's the executing of the planning is
exactly. And execution, the devil's in the details of the execution, right?
Yeah. No, okay, well, that's really cool, though. And because honestly, like, AI has been a huge help for me with that type of stuff, right? Because it allows me to, one of the things I teach in my class to the other real estate agents and loan officers is, when you have these ideas, sometimes it's good just to get it all out. So I'll just open up the microphone portion of ChatGPT and just brain dump everything that's happening, like go down every tangent, go down everything. And at the very end, it's like, okay, let's itemize this, organize it, and figure out what can I execute on right away. And then, because then it's like, I'm telling you, like, the AI has been so great for people with ADHD because it allows us to take all of these insane thoughts, to go down the rabbit hole of all the creativity of things that we have in our mind and put it to paper and then have somebody be like, okay, what can I actually do? And what's step one? Like, that's how I've built a good chunk of, the systems within my business that I never would have been able to do that before because the technology didn't exist. I figured a lot of it out just, through trial and error, and it takes time. But since AI has been born, like I've been able to almost fully automate my mortgage business to where I'm only working a few hours a week out of it now, because all the stuff that I was doing before, which would take 80 to 100 hours a week of my own time, I've been able to create systems for or hire somebody to do it for me. Because as you get older, at least for me, I have found that time is much more valuable than any kind of money out there. That time is what really matters. That's the one thing we're not going to get more of. Like we all have an expiration date at some point, and we don't know when it is. So you just have to make the best moment of every single day, and so part of that, and I love that your mind's like that as well, because you're thinking about it on an even different scale. It's like what can we have that would help put more time back in our day? If, like you said, a Rosie the robot that could, knock out the dishes real fast, or, go pick up the dog's poop in the backyard, or, just all the little daily tasks that take time out of our day so that we can, either, just get more enjoyment out of life. Right. And so I'd love to think that's where the world's headed, and I think, especially having kids and younger siblings, I feel like they're figuring that out a little bit faster than we are. Like, when I was younger, it was all about just getting that first job. Even doesn't matter what it was. If you hated it, who cares? You suck it up. You work your way through. You work to the next job. And so I spent years working a job that I hated because that's just what we did. That's, that's what our parents taught us. You suck it up and you figure it out. But now, like, I'm noticing my younger sibling is much more selective. Like, she'd rather just not work and make a little less money than work a job that she hates. I think that's kind of cool, right? Some people see that as like lazy, or they just don't have the work ethic. I'm like, no, I know my sister, she has amazing work ethic, but she's just not willing to give her time and energy to something that she doesn't care about. And that's really cool. And so, and with this world, the way it's evolving, like, I think it's all going to work out. Like, that we're going to find things that, those adulting, the mundane tasks that just have to get done, technology is going to take that's place. So how did you get into that side of things? Because I'm, we're similar age. I'm about to turn 41. You're 44. So like we didn't have that tech, right? A lot of I look at the world, like I was driving I'm out here in LA, and there was like those little robot delivery trucks down the street, like bringing people their food. I was like, this shit is crazy. Like, like a few years ago, that wasn't even a thing. And, driverless cars, like the Waymos, like,
have you ever driven in one?
I have, yeah.
It's a little crazy.
It's scary. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's that older generation. Like, do I trust this robot? Like,
and look, there's something to that, right? No, you shouldn't trust the robot, because anything digital, I mean, everything is manipulable and hackable, and we can get into that. So my technology career, so very young age. My very first paycheck job, or one of my early paycheck jobs, is I worked for the school district of Philadelphia. And this was a co-op in 11th grade. So I used to go around to all the different schools throughout the school district, and I would fix printers and install things and teach teachers on software programs. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was curious enough that you figure it out, right? And if you don't, you go back the next day and you ask somebody like, hey, Tom, how did you fix that printer? And he's like, I did this. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go and do that now, right? So I was exposed to technology at a very, very young age and fell in love with it. And again, I was always cracking things open and trying to figure out how they work. And I don't know why that was the case, to be honest. I was just always gravitated towards it.
I was the same way, man.
and my corporate career, I'll say my W-2 employment career in the world of technology, I mean, I was like 18 or 19 years old, and I was running the Philadelphia Police Project, where for the entire city of Philadelphia, I was installing all the computers and the hardware and the mounts for the police cars and the fire cars and local news stations. And I was leading that entire project with other people. It wasn't just me. And I really got exposed to a lot more technology. And then I left that role and I started working for Siemens. Siemens is a large company at the time. I worked in our business services division, and I spent most of my bulk of career in their healthcare IT division. And in the world of healthcare IT, I was developing medical record software, managing data centers and infrastructure. So I was always on the cutting edge, right? After I did that, working at Siemens and Cerner for about 13 years, I then went into the world of technology sales. So I was the person who would go into a Pepsi-Cola or a large law firm or a manufacturing firm or a trucking and logistics firm or a sports firm and help them with all aspects of technology. I mean, there was no like do one thing. It was in the world of technology, it was compute and storage and network and infrastructure and cyber and policy and governance. It was just a whole bunch of shit. Yeah. And what that also forced me to do was stay on the bleeding edge of technology, right? When virtualization was a thing, then they came out with what's called hyperconverged, which is a kind of virtualization, but a different approach to it. Yeah. I was in the world of hyperconverged infrastructure before people even knew what it was. So I was constantly exposed to it. And then in the world of artificial intelligence, in 2018, funny, we're talking about real estate too. In 2018, I worked for a company where we used artificial intelligence and one of our third-party vendors to remove the age bias from mortgage loan applications. So really? We were finding the use case effectively was that mortgage loan applications were getting denied for people who would otherwise qualify because people were seeing their age on the application. So we built a system using smart software, which is really what AI is. It's just really smart software to be able to look at applications and flag things where there could have been an age bias where approvals actually would have been made. I took that as a personal effort because, again, I bought my first house when I was 20.
Right.
Like, people need to be able to get into a house, and if they qualify in other ways, and like, let's remove that bias. So I've always been on the cutting edge. And And that's always evolved into the world of agentic artificial intelligence systems. I work with a lot of folks in the Philadelphia area that are part of like artificial intelligence networks. And,
Yeah.
I'm always, that's part of that insatiable curiosity too, right? Just
Yeah.
if it's new, I want to hear about it, and let's tinker with it. Let's kick the tires, or let's talk about the theory behind it, and then how can we take it from theory to practicality and practice.
It makes so much sense when I think about it, right? Because again, in our age group growing up, like we didn't have the digital frontier, right? Like we couldn't explore that as kids because it didn't exist. And so we had to do the physical things. I also took apart pretty much every toy I ever had. I just was constantly pulling stuff apart. I had my parents had an old truck that they said I could have when I turned 16, but it didn't really run great. So every day after school, I would go in and I would just start pulling the motor apart, putting it in the right order, and then putting it back together until I figured out how it all worked. And that's how I started, to get work onto cars. And then that got me into I started my first business when I was 16, installing car stereos, because I grew up in a small town and nobody knew how to do it. And I had just figured it out for my own self because I wanted loud music. And so, it's that curiosity of how things work and getting into the core of it. And so now that we have this digital space and we have this digital world that there is, it's like space, right? Like it's untapped. We don't know what's possible. You can't just pull it apart. You can't physically take it apart like you can other, physical items. And so that I think is why it's so fascinating for people like us, right? Like the capability of what's possible. And so when you get into cybersecurity, into digital stuff, man, it's just we're barely tapping the surface.
And that's why I think I was drawn to this career, not intentionally, right? Again, I somehow stumbled my way forward throughout life. I wouldn't say that there was any grand plan. It's not like I was going to be a technologist. Just one thing led to another and to another. But because there are so many aspects of technology, and it's always evolving, it's always changing, it's always new, it helps with my insatiable curiosity as well as my problem solving requirements, right? Because I've worked with companies either as a contractor or W-2 who spend well over $1 billion to $2 billion a year on technology. And it's like, oh, when you work with companies that are spending that much money and you can get on the cutting edge of quantum this or, super high compute and, building in the world of healthcare, right? I've worked with people who have built what we call high performance compute that would do genomic sequencing, right? So you need a lot of really quick technology to be able to rapidly sequence the genes. Oh my God, I would have never thought in a million years. Now I'll touch on one more thing because we're talking about curiosity and love of learning. In probably the last four or 5 years, I've really branched out and have not just focused just on the pure technology. I've really been working to bridge the gap between human behavior and technology.
Ooh,
so you're starting to see, so you're starting to see new college degree programs in the world of what we call cybersecurity.
Ooh, okay.
So it is the behavioral sciences as well as the technology. Because in the world of technology, right, with phishing and when people get ransomware and hacked, most of the problems or the challenges, come from somebody as a human did something that maybe they shouldn't, or weren't supposed to do. They clicked on a link, they downloaded something, and that statistic is something like 85 to 95% of the issues, depending upon what reporting you're looking at. And companies are spending 90% of their technology budgets on tools and software and systems that don't address the human element.
Right. Oh, that's fair. No, that's absolutely right. Because it takes an action in order to get hacked, in order to give that information up. It takes a human action. How do you plan for that, right?
One of the groups I work with is called the Cognitive Security Institute. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. And our role as the Cognitive Security Institute is we're trying to figure out, sorry if you hear the dog in the background.
Oh, good. I got you.
We're trying to figure out how do we defend the human leader? How do we protect human agency and decision-making in the world of narrative manipulation, digital debauchery, or a lot of different things? Because I'll tell you, anything digital, you can't trust what you see, especially now with deep fakes and everything. So, but you can't just solve it with a technical problem or a technical solution. How do we, as a human species, live in a world where you've got Rosie the robot and all the AI, and then bad actors could manipulate? One quick story. There was a gentleman who decided he wanted to, and you could read this article out there online. A guy wanted to be able to control his vacuum robot with his Xbox controller. So he went to, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever the AI thing is and worked with the systems and figured out how he could control it with his own Xbox controller. But what they actually did was gave him access to over 7,000 robot vacuums all over the country and the world because of the way the AI system, go and do this. So this guy effectively had eyes and ears into 7,000 people's home because he just tried to do his own Xbox controller, right?
That's crazy.
So we're always trying to figure out, how do we defend against things like that? And how do we stop playing the catch-up game, right? Because when we're facing some of these adversaries, and these adversaries are really good at what they do, they're leveraging all these AI systems. They're using textbook college psychology to poison and manipulate these AI systems so that the output that everybody else receives is a skewed narrative. So how do we get ahead of the game and stop playing catch-up and cat and mouse with this? How do we take a quantum leap advantage forward to be able to really get ahead of the game? Everybody talks about education and awareness, which is great. But you being a finance guy, I'll share this with you. I've always equated financial literacy with cybersecurity education. We've been screaming about financial literacy in this country for 100, 150 years. Plenty of tools. The way you do it is kind of timeless and classical, right? You follow kind of, Jack Bogle's experience of investing, and, it's not like it's new things, but people, even the folks that know the education, they still don't take the action. I equate that same thing to the world of cybersecurity. People know, don't click on shit. Don't download things. Don't go to websites you're not familiar with. Don't open up emails from people you don't know. Don't reply to the text that says you owe toll money. Like, whatever the thing is, I don't know how to break that chain right now. I don't know how to do that pattern interrupt that we get ahead of the game. Because, think of a child that is younger. As part of the Cognitive Security Institute, when we look at the pure psychology and how to protect people, we're saying that, digital literacy and understanding how to operate in a digital world, that training needs to start for people as young as 6 years old.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
So how do we? Yeah.
Right. So how do we get that into the hands of more people? But then it can't just be education and awareness, because even when people know the proper things, they're not always taking the right action. How do we get the tools and the technology to be more in line with actual human behavior versus trying to shoehorn things in the opposite direction?
And then the bigger question is, how do you put in those safeguards while still giving us our free will, right? Like, without
Correct.
like not being able to click on certain things, like by just taking away the option. So that's a fine line. That's a tough balance because of, again, the world that we live in. Like, we've got that free agency, we've got our free will to do those things, but yeah, so you're right. Education is just the first part. It's the education, and then it's the actionable items that can happen. So, because unfortunately, there are still, like you said, bad actors. There are people with bad intentions. But I don't know. Like, I feel like they're getting more and more obvious, especially with this, the younger generations. But even we all still get caught sometimes. That's a really good question. I don't know. So that's kind of what you're working towards, I guess, is to kind of.
Yeah, and it's not just me, right? I work with a number of folks across industry, government, and academia to try to really bridge those gaps and figure out what can we do as a country, as a nation. How can we manage this? And look, in the world, let's be honest, the world's on fire in just about every corner of the world right now, right?
So many bad things going on. It's
and I don't see this slowing down. And my hypothesis is that this will continue to get ramped up. Where it'll end, I'm not quite sure. I try to have a positive attitude towards us all, but I also look at the reality of situations, right? I don't live in a world that I hope to be. I live in the world as it is. And there's some unfortunate realities when we look at it that way. But it's even, I look at cyber attacks, right? Our water infrastructure and our power and energy infrastructure in this country is so compromised. Our telecommunications, like the 9 largest telecommunication providers in the world, all compromised. All of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if we know that those are the facts, what are the next steps then? How do we as a human species operate? How to move forward? How do we increase our own human and real estate resiliency to protect against power grids and water treatment facilities and transportation and all those things collapsing, which is a very unfortunate possibility, right? Now, the likelihood and probability, I'll keep my numbers to myself, but let's, I certainly think there's more actions. Again, it comes down to the actions and the execution.
It brings up a good point because, I think we've got about half the steps, right? Like I love the existence of social media and the fact that, like, again, me and you would never have been able to have a conversation like this without technology, without social media, without me putting myself out there and you finding me and whatever, right? Like, so I think that's part of it, right? This gives us a voice. It gives us an opportunity to get our opinions and ourselves out there. But yeah, what's the next step? Where's the actionable version of, like, social media, right? Like, it's like, how do you, like, what's that accountability partner? I don't know. I think it might be headed there. Like, I've got apps that help me with that type of stuff. I know you mentioned you had, like, lost a ton of weight. I did something similar. I think I lost about 70 plus pounds, as well. And I did it through an app because, again, ADHD brain, it helps to have a checklist every day. It helps to be able to log my calories. It's just math at the end of the day. That's all math too. It's like, okay, if I have this many calories and I burn this many, I'm going to lose weight. But if I take in more, I'm going to gain weight. So I have to track them. I have to track them until it becomes second nature and I don't need to track them any further. So, maybe it's more things like that. Maybe it's more like, here's your steps of what you can do, like, to keep your information safe, to, make sure it's not compromised. But on a global scale, that's tougher, right? Because, like you said, the telecommunications, the water stuff, that's been around for hundreds of years, or it's been around for a long time. And the technology that we have now didn't exist then, and it's hard to catch up. Like you said, we're always playing catch up. Yeah. And so, I think
what's really interesting, I'll give you two very quick examples on digital devices. And to your point, right, externalizing our brain for ADHD is really important, right? Being able, whether it's a notebook or notes or whatever app your thing is, being able to get it out of our own brain and visualize it, for me at least, is very important. Yep. But there's a lot of risks that come with that too, right? First of all, there is no such thing as privacy. 100% of everything you do digitally is monitored, tracked, logged, recorded for various reasons. Maybe it's just marketing. Maybe it's more.
That's why I laugh when everyone, like, I sometimes have the older generation that, like, when they auto-verify bank statements through the bank, like, well, I don't want to put my username and password. And I'm like, your information's out there whether you like it or not. So it's
yeah, but even in the world of, like, defense, like, how do we protect against this in cybersecurity? I know there's been an example where an executive board member for a very large company wind up getting an alert on his Apple Watch that said he was having a heart condition, wind up going to the emergency room. Turns out that his heart was perfectly fine, and bad actors had manipulated his digital device to make him think he was having a heart attack, so he missed a key executive board meeting. If that was a board meeting on a merger or an acquisition or something really key and important, you've now, impacted and changed the trajectory of that company.
Yeah,
right?
It's like short a stock or something.
Exactly. So how do we protect against that?
That human behavior you talked about, right?
Exactly.
You can't plan for that stuff, but that the bad actors are almost counting on that.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are. And now in the world of, warfare, what's going on, the digital warfare, space and digital are the two really big key parts right now in terms of warfare and capabilities and capacity and scale and how they can do certain things. But we're finding multiple examples, not a single, but multiple examples of leaders either from the Russia-Ukraine war or what's going on in the Middle East who have either been assassinated or they're finding secret bases that are not on public radar because the soldiers will go out and use their Strava or their Apple device or their Garmin to track their runs, and people are using that against them. In one case, I think it was either a Ukrainian or a Russian submarine commander was assassinated because they used the data from his watch to follow where his runs were and just killed him out in the open.
Dude, it was like that most recent Mission Impossible movie, like the AI that was manipulating things to where they thought like people were there, but then it actually wasn't.
That's real life.
That is real. Yeah, that's the world we live in. So yeah, how do you protect against that stuff? So it's just scary, exciting. I mean, this is just, like I said, we can't, there are going to be things that we can't always control. About out of time here, but I always like to ask this question. So, Mike, what would you like to be remembered for, I guess? Who is Mike and how would you like to be remembered?
I'm not really quite sure how to answer that question. I'll tell you why. There's a part of me that's like, yes, legacy and leave a legacy and do great things, but there's the other realization that nobody gives a shit. And in 100 years, nobody's going to remember our names. Yep. 300 years from now, nobody's going to give a shit about anything that happens right now. So I constantly am having that, good parrot, bad parrot on my shoulder conversation.
Yeah.
But for me, I would say, what would I want to be remembered as, the end of life? Being a good, kind, caring person, taking care of others, and striving my best to, help others and leave some sort of a positive mark on this world before the Grim Reaper takes me.
Love that. Love that. Well, Mike, you've left a positive impact on me today just with this conversation. So again, I want to thank you for your time and your energy, and it's all good things. These are all great conversations, why I love to do this. So it has been a pleasure chatting with you today, and it's just thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Thank you for your time.